The ultimatum. The morning started like any other Tuesday across Earth until the sky changed. 7 massive structures materialized above the planet's major population centers, hanging in the atmosphere like dark monuments to impossible physics. Each vessel stretched nearly 5 kilometers in length, their surfaces smooth as polished obsidian and radiating a faint blue luminescence that made them visible even in daylight. Within minutes, every satellite, every radar system, and every telescope on Earth focused on these uninvited guests. Commander Elena Morrison stood in the operations center of the Global Defense Initiative headquarters in Geneva, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays surrounding her. At 42 years old, she had spent 2 decades preparing for this exact moment, though a part of her had always hoped it would never come. Her hand instinctively moved to the communication device at her collar, as alarms blared throughout the facility. The vessels did not attack. They did not move. They simply waited, their presence alone enough to send waves of panic rippling across the entire planet. Financial markets crashed within the first hour. Emergency services were overwhelmed with calls. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the rapture to divine judgment. Political leaders scrambled to coordinate responses while their populations looked to the skies with a mixture of terror and wonder. Then the message came. Every electronic device on Earth simultaneously received the transmission. Television screens, computer monitors, smartphones, even digital billboards in city centers displayed the same image. A being materialized in the center of each display, its form both beautiful and unsettling. It stood nearly 3 meters tall with skin that shimmered like liquid silver. Its eyes were large and completely black, reflecting nothing. When it spoke, the words bypassed translation entirely, arriving directly in the minds of those who heard it. People of Earth, the being began, its mental voice carrying an authority that demanded attention. I am Archon Valara, High Representative of the Galactic Dominion. For 50,000 of your years, we have maintained order across this region of space. We govern 500 civilizations, ensuring peace, prosperity, and progress. Your species has developed technology that brings you within our jurisdiction. We welcome you to join the civilized galaxy. Morrison watched the broadcast from multiple angles, her analytical mind already dissecting every word and gesture. Around her, junior officers whispered nervously, but she remained silent, waiting for what she knew would come next. Archon Valara continued, and now its tone shifted slightly. However, your inclusion requires certain adjustments. You must surrender all military capabilities to Dominion oversight. Your governments will be restructured to align with Dominion principles of efficiency and harmony. Your scientific research will be guided by Dominion advisors. Your communication networks will be integrated into our systems. Your expansion into space will proceed only with our authorization. These are not negotiations. These are requirements for peaceful integration. The image shifted to display a series of holographic documents, their alien script slowly transforming into every written language on Earth. The terms were comprehensive and absolute. Earth would retain local governance for day-to-day matters, but all major decisions would require Dominion approval. Humanity would be permitted to maintain police forces for internal security, but all weapons capable of space combat would be confiscated. Trade would occur only through Dominion channels. Travel beyond the solar system would be restricted. Any technological advancement would be monitored and regulated. You have 72 of your hours to accept these terms, Valara stated. After this period, we will implement integration through alternative means. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving billions of humans staring at blank screens. The next 3 days descended into chaos. Morrison barely slept as she coordinated with military leaders, scientists, and politicians from every nation. The Global Defense Council convened an emergency session, and for once, ancient rivalries and political divisions seemed to fade against the magnitude of the decision facing humanity. In the council chamber, representatives from every major power debated frantically. Some argued for immediate acceptance. The Dominion offered technology beyond human imagination, an end to war and disease and protection from other cosmic threats. Why fight against beings who had governed successfully for 50 millennia? Others saw only subjugation dressed in diplomatic language. They pointed out that every term stripped humanity of its sovereignty and right to self-determination. Morrison presented her intelligence assessment with characteristic precision. We have analyzed their vessels using every sensor we possess. Their technology is centuries, possibly millennia, ahead of ours. Their shields alone could withstand our most powerful weapons. A military confrontation would be suicide. She paused, letting the grim reality settle over the room. However, I have concerns about their historical claims. She activated a holographic display showing data her team had compiled. The Dominion claims to govern 500 civilizations peacefully. Yet we have detected references in their own broadcasts to enforcement actions and compliance measures. She highlighted several passages. These are not the terms of partnership. These are the terms of conquest wrapped in bureaucratic language. Dr. James Chen, Earth's leading physicist and Morrison's longtime colleague, stood to present his findings. He was a slight man in his 50s with graying hair and eyes that sparkled with intense curiosity. I have been analyzing the energy signatures from their vessels. Their technology operates on principles we are only beginning to understand. But I have found something interesting. He manipulated the holographic display to show complex mathematical equations. Their shields operate on a frequency modulation system. It cycles through different states to deflect various types of attacks. But there are microsecond gaps during the transitions, theoretically exploitable gaps. The council chamber erupted with questions. Could Earth's weapons exploit these gaps? Did humanity have any chance of resistance? Dr. Chen raised his hands for silence. I am not saying we should fight. I am saying their technology is not magic. It can be understood and potentially countered. But the cost would be enormous. Morrison spent the second day investigating something that troubled her deeply. The Dominion claimed 500 member civilizations, yet Earth's radio telescopes had detected signals from only 312 distinct sources. Where were the others? She assigned her best analysts to search through every fragment of data they had collected from the Dominion's initial transmissions. Late on the second night, one of her analysts found something buried in the metadata of Valara's broadcast. It was a reference file, likely included accidentally, containing historical records. Morrison read through the translated text with growing horror. The records mentioned civilizations that had been integrated through alternative means. 63 separate incidents over the past 50,000 years. But when her team searched for current references to these 63 civilizations, they found nothing. No communications, no representation in Dominion governance, no trace of their continued existence. She brought her findings to an emergency meeting of Earth's top leadership. They erased them, Morrison said quietly, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. Every civilization that resisted was not just defeated. They were eliminated completely, removed from history. The Dominion does not negotiate because they have never needed to. They simply erase problems. The President of the United Americas leaned forward, her face pale. Are you certain? Morrison nodded. I have cross-referenced their historical records with astronomical data. 63 star systems that once showed signs of advanced civilization now show none. Some appear to have been deliberately sterilized. The Dominion's peace is maintained through the threat of extinction. The final day of the deadline arrived. Morrison stood once again in the operations center. But now the mood was different. Humanity had made its decision. It was not unanimous. Millions still believed acceptance was the only rational choice. But the majority had chosen something else. They had chosen to stand. The response was drafted by representatives from every nation, every culture, every faith. It was translated into the Dominion's language and prepared for transmission. Morrison reviewed it one final time before authorizing its release. The words were simple and direct. Archon Valara and the Galactic Dominion, the message began. Humanity has considered your terms. We acknowledge your power and your long history of governance. We understand that you believe your system brings peace and prosperity. However, we must respectfully decline your offer of integration. The message continued with carefully chosen words. We do not reject the idea of joining a galactic community. We reject the surrender of our freedom to choose our own path. You ask us to give up our right to defend ourselves, to govern ourselves, to determine our own future. These are not acceptable terms under any circumstances. We would rather face the consequences of independence than accept the comfort of subjugation. Morrison authorized the transmission, and it broadcast from every radio telescope and communication satellite humanity possessed. Across the planet, billions watched and waited for the response. They did not wait long. The 7 Dominion vessels shifted position, their movements synchronized with disturbing precision. They formed a geometric pattern above Earth's equator, and their blue luminescence intensified. Then Archon Valara appeared once more on every screen. But now its mental voice carried an edge of something that might have been surprise or perhaps anger. "You refuse," it stated, the words resonating with disbelief. "In 50,000 years, only 8 species have initially rejected our terms. All eventually understood their error. You are primitives playing with forces beyond your comprehension. You have spacecraft that can barely reach your neighboring planets. You have weapons that would not scratch our shields. You believe defiance is strength. It is foolishness." Morrison felt her jaw tighten as she listened. Around her, officers prepared for what might come next. Every defense system Earth possessed went to maximum alert. Fighter craft launched from bases across the planet. Naval vessels moved into position. It was theater, really. Everyone knew these preparations were inadequate against Dominion technology. But humanity would not surrender without even the pretense of resistance. "Your alternative means of integration begins now," Valara continued. "You will be given one final demonstration of our authority. Then you will accept our terms. Or you will serve as an example to others who might consider defiance. We have maintained galactic order for longer than your species has existed. We will not be denied by children." The transmission ended and one of the Dominion vessels descended toward the Pacific Ocean. Morrison tracked its movement with growing dread. "What are they targeting?" she demanded. Her tactical officer checked the displays and his face went white. "Commander, they are approaching the location of our largest submarine fleet." Morrison watched in horror as the Dominion vessel stopped just above the ocean's surface. A beam of red energy lanced downward, penetrating hundreds of meters of water in an instant. The ocean began to boil. The submarines below tried to scatter, but they moved too slowly. Within seconds, 15 vessels containing over 2,000 sailors simply ceased to exist, vaporized by technology that treated water and steel as if they were paper. The Dominion vessel rose back to its original position, leaving only steam and debris behind. Valara's voice returned one final time. "That was a demonstration of our capability and our resolve. You have 12 more hours to reconsider your foolish decision. Choose submission or face consequences beyond your imagination." Morrison stood frozen, staring at the displays showing the disaster site. 2,000 people dead in seconds, 2,000 families destroyed. And this was just a demonstration, a warning of what the Dominion could do if humanity continued to resist. Around her, officers wept openly. Others stood in stunned silence. A few screamed for immediate retaliation, though they knew such action would be futile. But Morrison's mind was already racing ahead. She thought about Dr. Chen's discovery of the shield frequency gaps. She thought about the historical records of erased civilizations. She thought about humanity's long history of facing impossible odds and finding ways to survive. They were outmatched in technology and firepower, but they had something the Dominion might not expect. They had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. She activated her communication link to Dr. Chen. "James," she said quietly, "I need you to gather every physicist, engineer, and weapons designer we have. We have 12 hours to turn your theory about their shields into something practical. Can it be done?" There was a long pause before Chen responded. "Elena, even if we can exploit those frequency gaps, we do not have weapons that can deliver enough damage in microseconds. It would require something we have never built before." "Then we build it," Morrison replied, her voice hardening with determination. "We have 12 hours and the resources of the entire planet. Make it happen." As Chen rushed to assemble his team, Morrison turned to her tactical staff. "I want every analysis we have on Dominion vessel positioning, movement patterns, and response times. I want contingency plans for evacuating population centers. I want communication channels opened with every military base and research facility on Earth. And I want someone to find me anything we know about Archon Valara personally." One of her junior officers looked up nervously. "Commander, you are planning to fight them?" Morrison met his eyes steadily. "I am planning to make them regret ever coming to our world. We may not win, but we will make them pay for every meter of ground they take." Across Earth, humanity prepared for war against an enemy that had never known defeat. Scientists worked frantically on weapons that existed only in theory. Military forces positioned themselves knowing they faced annihilation. Civilians fled cities or gathered with loved ones, uncertain if they would see another sunrise. And in hidden facilities around the planet, Engineers and programmers worked on Morrison's secret project, a desperate gamble that might be humanity's only chance. The 12 hours passed in a blur of activity and mounting tension. When the deadline expired, the 7 Dominion vessels began moving into attack formations. Their blue luminescence shifted to angry red. Archon Valara's voice echoed once more across every communication channel. Your time has expired. Your defiance ends now. Prepare for integration through corrective force. Morrison stood in the operations center, surrounded by displays showing the approaching doom. Her hand rested on a control panel that would activate Earth's desperate counterattack. She thought about the 2,000 sailors who had died as a demonstration. She thought about the 63 civilizations that had been erased from existence. She thought about every human being on the planet who had chosen freedom over submission, knowing the cost might be extinction. Then she pressed the button and said the words that would echo through history. All forces engage. Show them what humanity means. The breaking point. The first missiles launched from hidden silos across 6 continents reached the Dominion vessels in 47 seconds. They were not conventional weapons. Dr. Chen and his team had worked through the night, modifying Earth's most advanced ordnance with frequency modulators designed to exploit the microsecond gaps in the alien shields. The missiles streaked through the atmosphere, their trajectories calculated with desperate precision. Commander Morrison watched the tactical display as the weapons approached their targets. Every person in the operations center held their breath. The missiles struck, and for a fraction of a second hope flickered. 3 of them penetrated the shields during the frequency transitions, their warheads detonating against the hulls of 2 Dominion vessels. Explosions bloomed in the upper atmosphere, visible from the ground as brilliant flashes of light. But when the light faded, the Dominion vessels remained. The damage was minimal, scorched sections on their otherwise pristine surfaces. Morrison felt her heart sink even as she maintained her composed expression. They had proven the shields could be breached, but Earth's weapons simply lacked the power to capitalize on those brief vulnerabilities. Archon Valara's response was immediate and devastating. 2 of the Dominion vessels descended toward major population centers, while the others maintained their positions. Energy beams lanced downward, not targeting military installations but civilian infrastructure. Power grids across South America collapsed in seconds. Communications networks throughout Asia went dark. The message was clear. Resistance would be punished not by destroying armies but by making the population suffer. Morrison slammed her fist on the console. They are targeting civilians to break our will. She activated the emergency communication network. All forces adjust targeting priorities. We need to draw their fire away from population centers. Fighter squadrons from 20 nations rose to meet the descending vessels, their pilots knowing they flew toward almost certain death. The Dominion point defense systems engaged, and the sky filled with explosions as human aircraft disintegrated. But some pilots managed to get close enough to fire their modified weapons. A few missiles found their marks during the shield frequency gaps, causing minor damage but proving that humanity could fight back, however inadequately. Captain Rafael Torres commanded a squadron of experimental strike craft launched from a hidden base in the Australian outback. His vessels were prototypes, built around the largest frequency modulators Chen's team could construct. They were fragile, barely tested, and dangerous to fly, but they represented Earth's best chance of inflicting real damage. Torres led his 12 craft toward the nearest Dominion vessel, weaving through defensive fire that turned 3 of his squadron into fireballs. His hands gripped the controls as proximity alarms screamed warnings. Lock onto their primary power junction, he ordered his remaining pilots. Chen's analysis says that is their most vulnerable point. We strike simultaneously on my mark. The strike craft accelerated to their maximum speed, pushing their untested engines beyond safe limits. Torres watched his targeting computer calculate the precise moment when the Dominion shield would transition frequencies. The timing window was 0.03 seconds. Miss it and their weapons would be useless. Hit it too hard, and the backlash might destroy their own craft. "Mark!" Torres shouted, and 9 remaining strike craft fired in perfect synchronization. Their enhanced weapons, crude compared to Dominion technology but carrying the full force of human desperation, struck during the frequency gap. The explosions carved deep into the Dominion vessel's hull, rupturing critical systems. The massive ship shuddered, its propulsion faltering. It began to lose altitude, trailing smoke and debris. Morrison watched in shock as the Dominion vessel crashed into the ocean, sending up a massive plume of water and steam. "We hurt them," she whispered, barely believing it. Captain Torres actually hurt them, but the victory was brief and costly. The other Dominion vessels immediately retaliated. Energy beams swept across the sky, targeting the strike craft. Torres managed to transmit one final message before his craft was vaporized. "Tell Earth we proved they can bleed." His signal cut off in a burst of static. Morrison closed her eyes for a moment, honoring his sacrifice, then forced herself to focus. 6 Dominion vessels remained, and they were now attacking with clear intent to punish humanity's defiance. She activated her direct line to Dr. Chen. "James, we brought one down, but we lost Torres and his entire squadron. We need more weapons, more time, more everything we do not have." Chen's voice came through, strained but determined. "Elena, I have been analyzing the debris from their crashed vessel. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it follows consistent physical principles. I think I know how to create a weapon that could exploit their shields more effectively. But building it would require every nuclear reactor on the planet working in coordination, and it would take at least 6 hours." "We might not have 6 hours," Morrison replied, watching as another Dominion vessel descended toward Europe. "But do it anyway. Authorize whatever resources you need. Strip every power plant if necessary." While Chen's team began their desperate work, Morrison activated her secret contingency plan. For weeks, her intelligence division had been preparing something that had nothing to do with weapons or military force. They had been compiling every piece of information about the Galactic Dominion, every fragment of data collected from their transmissions, every historical record they had inadvertently revealed. And they had been preparing to broadcast it all across every frequency they could generate. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Morrison's communications specialist, looked up from her console. "Commander, the transmission package is ready. We have enough power to broadcast it throughout the entire solar system and beyond. If there are any other civilizations listening, they will receive it." Morrison authorized the transmission, and Earth began broadcasting the truth about the Galactic Dominion. The message contained the historical records of the 63 erased civilizations. It included analysis of the Dominion's integration terms, showing how they systematically stripped away freedom and sovereignty. It presented evidence of their ruthless punishment of resistance, and most importantly, it showed humanity fighting back, proving that the Dominion was not invincible. The broadcast reached beyond Earth's solar system, traveling at light speed toward nearby stars, but it also propagated through the quantum communication networks the Dominion themselves used. Within minutes, the message was spreading across their entire governance structure, reaching the 500 civilizations under their control. Archon Valara appeared once more, and for the first time Morrison detected genuine anger in its mental voice. "You dare to spread lies about the Dominion? You compound your defiance with propaganda. Your species will serve as the most complete example of corrective action in our history." Morrison responded directly, her voice broadcast from every remaining communication facility on Earth. "They are not lies, Archon. They are your own records. You have erased 63 civilizations who dared to resist. You maintain order through fear and violence. You call it peace, but it is just submission enforced by the threat of extinction." "We maintain order," Valara replied coldly. "We prevent the chaos that consumed the galaxy before our dominion. We have brought prosperity to 500 civilizations. The price of order is sometimes severe, but it is necessary." "Who gave you the right to decide that?" Morrison challenged. "Who elected you to rule over others? You are not maintaining peace. You are maintaining your own power. And we will not submit to tyrants, no matter how old or how powerful they claim to be." The exchange was broadcast across the planet and throughout the Dominion's networks. For the first time in 50,000 years, someone was publicly challenging the Dominion's authority, questioning the foundations of their rule. And other civilizations were listening. On a world 300 light-years away, a species called the Virendi received Earth's broadcast. They had been integrated into the Dominion 12,000 years ago and had accepted their place in the galactic order. But the broadcast awakened something dormant in their collective memory. They remembered their ancestors' resistance and the price of defiance, and they wondered if humanity's courage might mean their own chains could be broken. Similar reactions occurred across dozens of worlds. The Dominion had maintained control for so long that most civilizations had forgotten what freedom meant. But Earth's defiant stand reminded them. Questions began to circulate. Debates emerged. Ancient resentments surfaced. The carefully maintained order started to crack. Back on Earth, the battle continued. Dr. Chen completed his weapon ahead of schedule, driven by necessity and human ingenuity. It was a massive energy projector that synchronized every nuclear power plant on the planet into a single focused beam. The weapon could only fire once before burning out every reactor involved. But Chen calculated it would deliver enough concentrated energy to overwhelm even Dominion shields. Morrison made the hardest decision of her career. To power the weapon, they would need to shut down electricity to 3 billion people. Hospitals would go dark. Life support systems would fail. Thousands would die from the power loss alone. But if the weapon succeeded, it might save billions. She gave the order, and across the planet, power grids redirected their energy to Chen's projector. Cities went dark. The weapon charged, drawing power from every available source. The Dominion vessels detected the energy buildup and began moving to intercept. But Morrison had positioned the projector in a deep underground facility that had once housed a particle accelerator. They would need time to locate and target it. Captain Maria Espinosa, commanding the last squadron of functional aircraft, led a desperate assault to buy that time. Her pilots flew directly at the Dominion vessels, firing everything they had not to cause damage but to distract. The aliens focused their defensive systems on the incoming aircraft, momentarily diverting their attention from the massive energy signature building beneath the surface. Fire, Morrison commanded, and Chen activated the projector. A beam of pure energy, representing the combined output of hundreds of nuclear reactors, lanced upward through a precisely calculated shaft. It struck the nearest Dominion vessel at the exact moment its shields transitioned frequencies. The impact was catastrophic. The alien vessel's shields overloaded, its hull ruptured, and it exploded in a fireball visible from half the planet. 2 down, Morrison breathed, but the cost was immediately apparent. Power plants across the planet began failing from the overload. The projector itself melted into slag, unusable for any future attacks. And 5 Dominion vessels remained, now fully aware of the threat and moving to prevent any similar weapons from being deployed. But something else was happening. The signals Earth had broadcast throughout Dominion space were having an effect. On 17 different worlds, civilizations began to question their overlords. The Verendi openly challenged their Dominion administrators. The Kelthera, who had been integrated 8,000 years ago, demanded to see the historical records Earth had revealed. Other species, emboldened by humanity's resistance, started to push back against restrictions they had long accepted. Archon Valara found itself facing something unprecedented: widespread civil unrest across multiple systems simultaneously. Dominion resources had to be diverted to suppress these disturbances. Ships that might have been sent to overwhelm Earth were instead deployed to maintain order elsewhere. The seemingly invincible empire was discovering that its authority rested on a foundation of fear, and fear could be overcome. Morrison received intelligence reports showing the growing chaos in Dominion space. "They are fracturing," she told her staff with grim satisfaction. "Every moment we hold out, more civilizations find the courage to resist. We are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting to break their entire system, but Earth was paying a terrible price." The Dominion vessels systematically destroyed infrastructure, targeting food distribution networks, water treatment facilities, and medical centers. They were not trying to conquer Earth anymore. They were trying to break humanity's will through suffering. Millions died in the first week of the conflict. Millions more faced starvation as supply chains collapsed. Yet humanity did not break. Communities organized to share resources. Scientists continued working on new weapons despite lacking basic necessities. Soldiers fought knowing each day might be their last. The spirit that had driven humans to explore, to question, to challenge every obstacle they faced, now focused entirely on survival and resistance. Dr. Chen, working from a makeshift laboratory powered by portable generators, made one final discovery. He found a pattern in how the Dominion vessels coordinated their attacks. They were using a central command protocol, all synchronized through Archon Valara's flagship. If that ship could be disabled, the entire fleet might lose cohesion. Morrison received his analysis and immediately began planning. We need to get someone close to that flagship with a weapon powerful enough to damage it from inside its shields. She looked at her remaining assets. We have one experimental shuttle capable of stealth approach. It can carry a single pilot and a nuclear device. Every person in the operations center understood what she was proposing: a suicide mission. Morrison called for volunteers and 300 people immediately stepped forward. She chose Lieutenant Commander Jackson Price, a veteran pilot with the most experience in experimental craft. Price accepted the mission without hesitation, saying only that he hoped it would make a difference. The stealth shuttle launched under cover of a coordinated assault by every remaining military unit Earth could field. While the Dominion vessels focused on the obvious attacks, Price guided his shuttle through the debris field left by destroyed human ships, using the wreckage as cover. His approach was agonizingly slow, requiring hours to navigate close enough to the flagship without being detected. Morrison watched his progress, unable to help, barely able to breathe. The entire operation depended on one person's skill and courage. Price reached the flagship's outer hull and attached his shuttle to a maintenance port Chen had identified. He activated the nuclear device set on a 30-second timer, then transmitted his final message. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who chooses freedom over submission. Price's voice was calm, almost peaceful. Tell them it was worth it. The explosion tore through the flagship's interior, bypassing its external shields. Archon Valara's vessel shuddered, its systems failing. The other 4 Dominion vessels immediately broke formation, their coordinated assault patterns dissolving into confusion. Earth's forces, battered and desperate, pressed their advantage, but the Dominion was not defeated. Reinforcements were coming from other sectors. Earth had bought time and inspired resistance across the galaxy, but the final outcome remained uncertain. As Morrison watched the damaged flagship retreat beyond the moon, she knew this was only the beginning of a much longer struggle. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, beings who had lived under Dominion rule for thousands of years made a choice. Inspired by humanity's refusal to submit, they began their own resistance. The Galactic Dominion, which had maintained absolute authority for 50 millennia, suddenly faced challenges on every front. Their empire, built on fear and overwhelming force, discovered that courage was contagious. Morrison stood in the ruins of her operations center, surrounded by exhausted staff and damaged equipment. Earth had survived barely. The cost had been catastrophic, but they had proven something that would echo across the stars, that freedom was worth any price, that tyranny could be resisted, and that even the oldest and most powerful empire could be challenged by those brave enough to stand. The war was far from over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not just defended their world. They had shattered the chains that bound 500 civilizations, and in doing so, they had ensured that whatever came next, it would be a future chosen freely, not imposed by force. Morrison looked up at the stars through the damaged ceiling, knowing that humanity's defiance had ignited something that could never be extinguished. The Galactic Dominion had asserted their authority, but Earth's answer had shattered the very foundations of their power. And across the endless expanse of space, civilizations were awakening to a simple truth. Freedom belonged to those brave enough to fight for it.